Okay, we are live. Hello, everybody. We are going to be giving everyone a few moments to filter in. I'll make some posts and the like to make sure everyone knows. Stream is live. Video. And we'll call it that one. Yeah. Perfect. Stream is live, and then I will post on Discord. Everyone, stream is live. Hello, 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 everybody. As you're filtering in, I'd love to hear from you. How are you all doing today on this fine Sunday morning? There's some cool stuff to go into today. We have another guest coming up, as well as a number of other topics that I'm very excited to tell to you about. In the meantime, though, while we're waiting for people to be filtering in, how are you all doing? How are things going? Any fun and exciting topics that you would like to cover or hear my thoughts on today before we dive too deeply into the rest of what is going on? I guess I'll just leave it on the videos tab for the moment, just to have a little backdrop, just to have a little backdrop to the situation. But we won't be starting with my channel. We'll be starting with much more important things. Okay, let's see. Predrag says Aztecs not coming. I do believe still that the Aztecs will arrive, as LAVAlanche says afterwards. But for now, no. LAVAlanche is a more appropriate pun title. Maybe. Good to see you, Guayar. I'm not angry. The Japanese are cool too. I agree. The Japanese were my number 2 pick, as we will be getting into in a little bit. And I think that there's plenty of good things to say about adding them to the game. Hi there, Godflesh. Good to see you, my friend. Find it neat that the Japanese, even if far away from the theory crafting I've done. Excellent. Hey there, Bub. How you doing, my friend? It's awesome to see you guys all filtering in. Again, we have quite a few things to cover today. Again, with another special guest later on. We're probably going to leave it for another 3 minutes or so to let more people filter in before we start diving into the main topic for today, namely the Japanese in Age of Mythology. Unfortunately, we don't have a ton of information about the Japanese yet, but we have enough that I want to make some conjectures and also take some credit. No, I mean, in the goofiest way possible. Hey there, Sturmegio. Good to see you as well. Make sure you all have some water if you don't have it already. And once again, if you guys have any questions for me or topics you'd like to hear me speak upon, now's the time to say them. You can also say them later on as we are deeper in to the stream. And let's see, what do we have today? We have the Japanese. We have a plug for one of my things. We have a shout out to a new up-and-coming YouTube channel. We have Build of the Month. We have a loose discussion surrounding polls. And then we have, again, a guest on for a live interview. He's a guy in the modding sphere who you have seen on my channel before, and who's wildly talented and has some cool stuff to show for us and hopefully some really interesting insights. So for any of you interested in the modding space and getting your hands dirty with modding, he will be a great person to hear about. Okay. Gabe says, I'm curious how Age Mythology will depict the Oni Tengu, or if they have the Yuki Onna, all Japanese myth units they have in mind. Yes, I will be getting into that in a moment, because I think it's a rather big topic to cover, and there's a lot of really interesting things to go into there. I'm just hoping it's not boring. That's my hope. Hey there, Dionisio. Good to see you. If Mesoamerican civs should be added to AOM, I believe we should add some sort of distinctions between Nahuatl cultures. I fully agree. My suggestion would be to just start with the Mexica, instead of just saying Aztecs and lump them all. But, they're not going to do that. They're going to call it the Aztecs. I just hope it's nice and distinct. What's all this fixation to the East? AOM got Japanese. I don't know. I think that it's less of a fixation. I think that they tend to bundle these things. Because when you look at it, typically speaking, we've seen Age of Empires content, for example, kind of release in clusters. And I wouldn't be surprised if they're thinking, oh, well, if we release kind of similar themed content for both Age of Mythology and Age of Empires, maybe there'll be cross-pollination. It looks more consistent. So I think it's a marketing strategy, and I wouldn't be surprised if it works. Fine, but it's hot outside. Yes, it was brutal outside last week where I'm living, and this week is looking to be warm as well. If you had to design a pantheon, which would it be aside from Sumerians or Aztecs? Japanese would be up there for me, but I think in terms of just personal interest, it would be something Celtic, specifically something Gaelic, specifically probably the Irish, if I had to pick. Which is funny because I'm not Irish myself, but I love Irish mythology. I just really don't want it to just be Celts or Gaels, but especially not Celts. Gaels I could live with. But yeah, I would get nice and specific and go with Irish personally. Since Japanese were part of my top 5 editions for AOM, have you thought about what civ could replace them? That's actually something we will get to momentarily. Okay, so I think we have goofed around for long enough. Let's talk about the Japanese. Over to our good friends over on the AOE wiki. God, I love this website. Let's go through what we have learned thus far. Should I do the read through? I guess I'll do the read through. A divine weapon, a mortal hero, a new pantheon awakens. Heavenly Spear brings an all-new Japanese pantheon to Age of Mythology Retold, including 12 new gods, each with unique god powers, divine technologies, and myth units drawn from centuries of legend. Embark on a 12-mission campaign following Yasuko, a humble farmer's daughter who discovers a magical spear and is swept into a mythic war. As she uncovers the spear's secrets, she must battle the cunning spider Yokai Magumo, the power-hungry warlord Kage Masa, and ultimately face the monstrous Yamato no Orochi, the titan of the Japanese pantheon. Command new units drawn from Japanese mythology, including famed kitsune foxes, the deadly Jorogumo spider, and the mighty club-wielding Oni. Elite samurai and shadowy shinobi join your armies to add new layers of strategy and deception. Announcement description. Yeah, so this tells us a decent number of things already, which I think is quite interesting. The first one, which I think is the biggest deal, is this. 12 mission campaign. That is good. We like 12 mission campaign. What we like less, however, is that it seems to be a campaign that only deals with Japan. They do obviously now have Chinese stuff, so even if you want to try to be like consistent, in Age of Mythology, you could, hop the sea and do some Chinese stuff. I think that would be quite cool. Or, given that it's Age of Mythology and they've never really cared about this in the past, and funnily enough, this is something for campaigns, I don't care about this whatsoever for Age of Mythology. You can totally just hop all the way west and do something with the other established cultures. I think that would be sick. An integrated campaign. Maybe it's something they'll do down the line. But I think that this campaign thing is going to be where this DLC succeeds or fails. Frankly, I wouldn't be surprised if this is where Age of Mythology succeeds or fails in general. Why do I say that? That sounds rather dramatic. Well, as you guys may have been following, Age of Mythology has not been doing fantastically since it launched, even with the Chinese being added. There was a bump, but not a huge one. And from what many reports I am hearing are saying, and from what much of what you guys have been saying, it's because a lot of people love Age of Mythology for its campaign. And the Chinese didn't really add much of a campaign. We've had like that one mythical scenario, I think they called it. Mythical battle, that's what it was. And besides that, we've just had the classic, which is good. It's really good. I love the classic Age of Mythology campaigns. And I don't know if a 12-mission independent storyline is going to do it. I think people play Age of Mythology because they want all of it to be mashed together. And I don't know. I could be wrong. But I'd be surprised if this was like a wild success. I'd like it to be, because I'd like more Age of Mythology content. But yeah, I think they should have gone for an integrated campaign. That's my guess. That's something that's really big and encapsulates all of the civilizations. Even if it's not like that much longer than this, but just like actively brings in other civilizations as much as possible. And you could do some cool stuff for sure. 12 is a good number though. I'm glad it's not like 6. A 6-mission campaign I'd be like, But no, this is a nice Age of Mythology sized campaign. I'm glad of that. Yeah, I'd love to hear what you guys think in that regard. But before we dive in, there's a few things that I wanted to cover as well, namely some of the teasers we got for what is being added. As for example, we have some gods listed. Amaterasu is no surprise at all. Raijin and Fujin, really not surprising at all. Although, again, I don't know if they specified whether these are major or minor gods. Amaterasu, you pretty much have to have a major god. These two, probably minor gods. Watatsumi, I don't think I've ever heard of this one before. At least I don't remember the name, if so. So nice. If that's like something kind of obscure, then that's awesome. And if not, maybe I'm just dumb. I don't know. Human soldiers. Now this is also actually noteworthy. The samurai and shinobi are both like wildly iconic, yes, but for people who say, oh, Age of Mythology is a game about antiquity. No, no it is not, as this now proves. These two really started to become iconic in the 1500s and maybe a little earlier. Oh, excuse me.
We're saying goodbye.
Are you saying goodbye?
Goodbye.
Goodbye, goodbye. Goodbye. Have a good time at the park.
Love you.
No, you cannot.
No, you cannot. There's no thing
Off
to
you
say
go.
goodbye to.
No.
Come on.
Off you go. Oh, a huggle. Yes, absolutely. But if you were trying to look at my screen, I would have said no. Because now is not the time for you to be looking at my screen. Pardon me. Have a good time at the park, everyone. All right. A sweet goodbye from my family. I thought the 3-year-old was going to be like, can I please look at your screen? To which the answer would have been no. But okay, anyways. Like I was saying. Yes, the samurai as an institution did evolve earlier than 1500. Like a good deal earlier. Shinobi, arguable. But I would argue that if these are going to look anything like this samurai that most people will expect them to, it's going to be like 1500s. Unless they want to make the samurai a mounted archer, that would be kind of sick. That would really throw me for a curve. But even then, that would put them at the most generous interpretation, like around Norse sort of time frame, which is consistent. But anyways, what this means is that Age of Mythology has no time frame, in summary. Or functionally no time frame. A time frame that spans 4,000 plus years. So that's the next thing. Now, in terms of myth units, these are like just about the most basic bitch myth units you could go for. I'm not like mad about that. This is fine, right? I do wish they had gone with some more funky ones though. Especially because they're in just in terms of Shinigami. There's like so much there that could have been like 10 myth units by itself, minimum. And so because of that, I feel like this is going to end up being a very conventional civilization when I think you really could have done something far more interesting, as I'll get to in a moment. The other... okay, so in summary, I think the myth units are probably going to feel pretty much conventional, at a guess. I bet they'll look good, but I think they'll feel pretty conventional, and I would have loved to see something more boundary pushing. Let's see... oh yeah, is this the Izanami or Izanagi spear? Let me double check this. Yeah, exactly. It's the Izanagi and Izanami spear. So the campaign is named after the spear that's used to create Japan, as part of the founding myth, effectively. And then the campaign description follows made up person. That's fine. That's tradition for Age of Mythology. Nice different background seems. Buddy cop comedy with a spear guardian. And yeah, imprisoned sun god, awesome, god for himself. So there's our Gargarensis right there. And then unforgettable character. We'll see about that. I hope they are. Escalating stakes, I can believe. Monstrous final form. Yeah, the Gargarensis. Awesome. So again, this is clearly just a Japan-only campaign, and I would have loved to see something integrated. That would be my big takeaway. Now, before we do some compare and contrast with my guesses, let's check in with you guys very briefly. Okay. I would like to see... okay, going up to what I last saw. Would like to see Sumerians in games, says Godflesh, rather than the Japanese. Cradle of Civilization, mythology is amazing. I'd agree. I think Sumerians are probably more deserving. than any other civilization you could add, but I understand why they aren't doing them. World War myth campaign, bingo, exactly, Dionisio. This is why I was a little annoyed about it. AOM's campaign whole appeal is we heroes from the Trojan War fall through a portal and meet Vikings. Yeah, exactly. I want to see it throw it all together. There was a complaint about the original Chinese campaign. A lot of people were hoping the retold version would bring in other civs. Want to see Castor and Amandra and all them again. Precisely. That is why I think this campaign will and this expansion is unlikely to do super duper well. AOM is too niche of a game. I don't agree. I think it's not so much that it's niche. I think that, God, where to even start with it? At a guess, I think that the issue with Age of Mythology is expectations. And people expect it to work a certain way. Even though I think it could be much better if it worked a different way. And so Age of Mythology is like a campaign game. And I feel like that's because we had that as our exposure to it when we were first discovering it back in the day. That seems like a big part of it to me, at a guess. I'm here because I heard there would be foxes. There might be. As long as it isn't something like Victors and Vanguard. Yeah, that would be a slap in the face. AOM is ancient MFs when the Norse show up. I have had people argue that to my face before. Oh, yeah, it's an ancient. No, it's not. It's not antiquity. It is random shit that they thought would be fun. There's no time frame. And the funny thing is, with Age of Mythology, I'm not as much of I don't have a problem with there not being a time frame. I'd expect that the major gods would be Amaterasu, Tsukuyomi, and Susanoo. It would make sense for me to be the three majors, other to be minor gods. Yeah, that's precisely what I guessed in mine as well. What's the name of the bull with spider legs? Oh, God, I don't even know. There wasn't any units from the ancient period, like the time of Yamato. I really doubt they will do it. They could. That would be cool. I think that would be sick. I think it's wildly underrated. But it doesn't have name brand recognition, and that is something that the Age franchise focuses on a lot. I'd say largely to its detriment. Even with the civs that are based on antiquity, Greeks and Egyptians are both based on completely different time periods inside this nonsensically long time period. Exactly. So there is no time frame. And while if I had entirely my choice, would I give Age of Mythology like a more specific time frame? Yeah, I probably would. But it's not like the worst thing in the world. I don't mind it that much in comparison to AoE 2, where I think it's a huge detriment. So, next thing I wanted to mention is my guesses. Here's my stupid face. Duh. And I wanted to talk about like what guesses I made and why. So why I guess the Japanese are one, pop culture presence. They're a regional pair with China, and they have like tons of potential for human myth units. Yeah, very well documented as well. I think those are all reasons that it actually worked out. I did mention though that Japan and like Shintoism is a modern religion. Though, unlike other modern religions, it seems like the Shinto practitioners don't really care about their religion being depicted in media. I could be wrong about that. That's how it seems. So I think that I hit the nail on the head with all that. Now to check in with my specifics of what I thought it would look like. I thought their core mechanics would be highly varied armies with strong core units but poor siege, to be determined. Sharp contrast between fodder and elites, to be determined. Lots of myth units with most gods having 2. I think this is very unlikely now. Which sucks, because I actually think this would have been a fantastic gimmick for the Japanese. I think this would have been so cool for them to have, on average, 2 myth units per god, minimum. And it would help show just how, like, nice pose. How do I even do that? Something like that. Yeah, I think this would have been a really cool way to showcase the like wild richness of Japanese like folklore monsters. Because God, they have more than enough. They have more than enough. So this is what I would have loved to see, and I think they will not do this. The hero thing remains to be seen. I would be kind of surprised if this were the case. Favor as shrines. I think this is possible, so we will see if I guess correctly. God guesses, Major, Amaterasu, Tsukuyomi, and Susanoo. I think Susanoo is pretty much a shoo-in because he shows up in the poster, right? He's wait. He's probably this guy right here. Probably. But we'll see. I could be wrong. But that seems to be what they are signaling to me, at least. Okay, and then, jumping back over, for minor, I did have Ryujin. I didn't have Fujin, but I probably should have. I guess I didn't have all 9, so I'll give myself the benefit of the doubt. And then also for myth unit examples, I got most of the ones that they listed. Oni, Kitsune, Tengu. But I will say that, and they're going to have a kappa. I'm certain they're going to have a kappa. And I really liked the idea where they would be cheaper and you'd have more options, but they'd have like less raw power. I thought that would be so sick, but I don't think they're going to do that. And I will say the thing that really like annoyed me about the myth units that we were shown thus far, at least, is the fact that we have the Shinigami as a myth unit. That's like, I don't know. I have a problem with this. Why? Imagine a culture that had a myth unit that was called Dragon. Similar thing to me, at least. They're just like, okay, but what type of dragon? Like, it's a big category. I don't know if you can simplify it like that. But anyways, it's kind of a minor point. And in summary, I think that my guesses were good, but they weren't like impressive guesses. I think most people could have guessed that this would be the case. And the one other thing I wanted to highlight is this. Whose shout scares away enemies. I predicted that. On my Sumerians build, I had a number of units that were able to do a fear effect. And again, not an impressive guess. I think most people could have guessed that the game was going to do something like this at some point, but I'm happy that I guessed correctly, even if it was pretty obvious. So, before we move on from the Japanese, my predicted review, based on what I've been seeing from the franchise recently and other topics more broadly, I think that the Japanese campaign will do okay. Or not the campaign, rather, but the Japanese expansion will do okay. I think people will get it. I think people will play it. And I do not think it will build any sort of substantive traction for Age of Mythology going forwards. I don't. I think it's gonna do fine, and people think, it's alright. And then they're going to move on with their lives. That is my guess. But I'd like to hear what you guys think. It doesn't seem interesting enough. It breaks with Age of Mythology tradition while also adhering to it too rigorously. Like, breaks from it in that it doesn't have an integrated campaign, which a lot of people really want. And that's the big break. Everything else seems very by the books, and I think too by the books. But I'd like to hear what you guys think. What do you think is going to be the outcome with this expansion? Are you really excited for it? Do you think it will just be fine? Do you think it will be better than fine? Do you think it'll be worse than fine? I'd love to hear your thoughts, and then we'll move on to the next order of business. Ayaha. Let's see what we got. It's funny that the Yamato period lasted halfway into the AoE 2 time frame. Indeed. Same as calling units warriors. Exactly. I expect at least one hero type to be called Kensei. There's strong brand recognition about it. Oh, I see what you... Senpai is better. Very funny. Yeah. Well, let me know what you guys think. Next order of business is one of my projects. This is Enclave. I would promise I will not linger on this too long. But Enclave is a tabletop role-playing game that I've been developing for quite some time. It is the reason that I can call myself a game developer of any stripe, even if not a real-time strategy one. And I'm about to be launching another Kickstarter for it. It's going to be highly ambitious. I have a massive expansion to the game planned, plus a relaunch of the core rule set. And so if you have even the slightest interest in tabletop games, or you know someone who has any interest in tabletop games, I would tremendously appreciate if you could hit the notify me on launch button here, and or you are willing to share it around a bit. The reason that I put it to you guys is because this is looking like it's going to do quite well. I could see it actually being quite big this time. And the bigger I can get with one game project, the bigger I can potentially get with other game projects, including for real-time strategy and similar. So you can consider this, if you've ever wanted to support me but haven't really liked the venues that we have thus far, this is the one. This is the big one. This is what I've been putting most of my time into recently. So if you're willing to support Enclave, I'd be tremendously grateful. And that is all I wanted to mention about it for now. Moving on. Next thing that I wanted to do. Oh, we'll do him next. I want to do a build of the month with you, and it's an unusual one. I got only a couple submissions for build of the month this month, but one of them stood out massively to me. Which is this bad boy. Obviously, I don't know Age of Empires 3 very well. And as such, I am not going to be able to give as much feedback and critique and analysis of this. But I want to tap through this slideshow with you guys so you can see just how much work was put into this thing. Because even if I don't fully get Age of Empires 3, I can see a high effort build. I know a high effort build when I see one. So I'm even gonna hide my video so you can see this in full. And I'm gonna pick my battles with what I read, because there's gonna be a lot of stuff here that's gonna just be too dense for me to get into. So pause the video, especially if you're watching in post, to see some of the fantastic details. I wish I could linger longer on this thing, but just enjoy. The Godflesh. Huge shout outs to you, my friend. This is a summary of how the Godflesh approaches Age of Empires 3 theory crafting. Again, we're going to be going fast through this. They lump too many years of history together, focusing on the colonization of America. I don't know the game, and this is still wildly accurate and on base. Frankly, I would like the game way better if it didn't have this focus whatsoever. So, overall approach from Godflesh. And now, let's take a look at what the Godflesh has done for a very particular civilization. In fact, I'll read this aloud to you guys. It's the end of the Middle Ages. Constantinople is no more, and the Church of Christ is falling apart. Thus, an air of uncertainty threatens to take a toll on the people of the known lands. Europe itself is on the brink of collapsing, and yet a simmering light shines on the horizon as an oath of salvation. New territories and riches through the wide world are being discovered, and a wave of technological, scientific, social, and economic developments are becoming the vanguard of human progress, giving birth to a new era of enlightenment and industry. But do not let yourself be fooled by the illusions of a peaceful future, as the fate of every nation has been decided by the weapons of their time. The pen that will write the history now will be the musket and cannon, and the ink shall be the blood of soldiers afoot and on horseback, lunging into the valley of death, the realm of shot and shell. The drums will thunder, the flutes will roar, and the regiment banners shall be devoured by the white smokes of black gunpowder. Marshals and admirals, kings and emperors alike, are going to fight on land and on sea for the supremacy of not only Europe, but the entire world. Welcome to the modern age. Welcome to the Age of Empires. Lovely. There's a few sounds that should play but don't work, unfortunately. The British is the topic for this build, with the proper Union Jack. Although I will say the other British flag does work for a pretty substantial chunk of this time frame. So, first of all, some bonuses for Western powers in general. With regional technologies, trading companies instead of markets, a bourgeois unit, faster universities, and extra housing, extra pop on houses, but more expensive. Here's what these do. Again, I wish I could tell you more about them, but to summarize, I'll just hit these right down here. Unique market. Market technologies are 5% more effective, improves the speed of trading ships, and allow bourgeois to work inside the company. Bourgeois can increase the value of receiving goods from trade carts and ships by 0.05% per bourgeois. And bourgeois are a unique villager. They suck at everything besides having better base stats, are better as hunters, which is kind of cute, and they wildly improve the rate of collection inside of workshops, which I think, and also can garrison inside of trading companies to receive more goods. Regional technologies, they have privateers, Basque whalers, which is a really cool topic, private armies, charter of privilege, and parliamentarianism. All of which are very cool ideas for summarizing kind of the Western European powers. This feels pretty appropriate to me. And the British themselves, after a lovely little history summary, focusing on 1533 to 1918. So this goes past World War I. Holy smoke. Lovely summary of British history here. I'm so sorry, Godflesh. I cannot go into detail on all that. The language will be modern English rather than the weird commandment shit that they have in game right now. Cross of St. George evolving into evolves into the Acts of Union, the flag of the Acts of Union. Western European architecture, Tower of London, Buckingham Palace as wonder, and musical theme they can have the British Grenadiers and Rule Britannia, which is entirely appropriate. Again, this should be able to play right now, but unfortunately it's not. I tested it earlier, it's not working for me. Apologies. And with that, here's a few details from Godflesh on what they get. Villagers and bourgeois, more HP, shipyards working faster, and warships move faster towards enemy ships, which I really like. Market and trading companies are researched faster, or the technologies rather. Foundry units have more HP. Advancing to Enlightenment and Imperial Age is cheaper, and the Industrial Age is less cheap, but still cheaper. And then trade workshops working faster is the team bonus. Bonus justifications are here for those who would like them. Unique soldiers, they have the Highlander. Excellent. This was a big part of the British Empire during this time. Let's see. Greater line of sight attack, especially against civilian units. The spiritual successor of the grossly inaccurate Woad Raider. Very cute. Imperial Highlander, the upgrade thereof. They have the Congreve rocket as a unique technology. That is a sick piece of history right there. Artillery that shoots incendiary rockets with big blast radius for fire damage. Pardon, not a unique technology, a unique unit. Excellent, excellent piece of history there. Rifle Brigadier as another option that they have. Unique Skirmisher. They do not have access to the regular Skirmisher until the Third Age, but they can train Rifle Brigadiers in the Fourth Age after investigating Baker Rifles, which is this technology. Then we have Imperial upgrades for the line infantry, the East Yorkshire Regiment. Again, the attention to detail is spectacular. 2nd Regiment of Life Guards is a unique upgrade for the heavy cavalry. Another unique technology, land pattern muskets. This is fantastic, guys. Fencible regiments. This is, okay, this one I don't understand as well. What is this? Oh, defensible. I see what you mean. Defensible regiments were organized as an answer to a possible invasion from Napoleonic France. That's such a cool... I love it. This is amazing. This is the sort of build that I would love to be able to, like the sort of detail I'd love to be able to go into for Age of Empires 2. The repeal of corn tariffs as another unique technology. That's so cool. Buying tariffs of food in the market are drastically reduced. That's so sick. And then the Thin Red Line. Line infantry, grenadiers, highlanders receive more HP, pierce attack against cavalry, and more when standing still. Thin Red Line is an expression born from the Battle of Balaclava during the Crimean War. That's so awesome. And let's see what else. Pax Britannica, the massive capstone technology. All ships get more HP. All warships receive bonus attack. Factories and trading companies generate more resources. Insane. Absolutely insane, and restricted for the capstone of the game. Intended game plan, for those who are interested. I do not understand the game super well. Civilization grades, all of which seem about accurate to me. I read through them earlier, even if I couldn't really justify them. Concerns and uncertainties. Maybe the civilization is too powerful. They do seem to be weaker in the early game, so could be a balance. Politicians. I want to keep the politicians, but I feel that game design could become more convoluted than it already is. No! Embrace the convoluted! Anyways, with that finishing thought, I conclude my presentation. Thank you for your attention. And thank you, Godflesh, for such a fantastic build. This was awesome. And I absolutely loved reading it. I'd love to try to get more AoE 3 stuff on the channel. Again, I just... It's not as much in my wheelhouse, but when I saw this presentation, I had to make an exception. It was fantastic. And you are fantastic as well, Godflesh, for creating something this cool. Beautifully done. I will... in fact, you know what I'm going to do? Let me quickly bang out a link. Oh, I can't bang out a link. Darn. Sorry. Godflesh, if you send me a shareable link to this, you can post it in chat if you want. Just one that what you want to do, if you don't know, is you go to share general access. You say anyone with the link can view. There's going to be a little thing here here that says anyone with the link can view, and then you're welcome to post that in the chat if you would like, and then we can also share it on the Discord. Beautifully done. I absolutely loved it. Before we move on, let's take a look at chat. See what you guys had to say about Godflesh's build, because I thought it was fantastic. Let's see what we got here. Basically, the Soldado. Okay, something else. Hello, Ace Runworld Mage. Good to see you too. After 3 Kingdoms debacle, I don't know anymore. Okay, I have thoughts on that. We'll go into soon. We have same as Godflesh. I have a hard time getting hype for any Age game at the moment. Yep. Dungeon Dad should get into your system. I am hoping to contact them, actually. It's not just 3K, it's V&V and a terrible mobile game as well. Yep, absolutely. Lady Insane says, as a belated comment, I guess the campaign might at least have a crossover mission where you interact with the other mythologies like the Immortal Pillars had. That would be nice, but it would be great if it was more than a single crossover. I actually didn't know that the Immortal Pillars campaign had, so that's good to know. Bourgeois, is that burgers? Why being all French? The term in English is based on bourgeoisie, which is like popularized through Marx, but like was a term that was used previously as well. The upper middle class, I guess you could say. Don't like AoE 3 because it spans too long. Would love an AoE 2 expansion to Renaissance and Age of Discovery only. Longbows to trains. Probably be its own game modes like Return of Rome. Exactly. AoE 2D, Engine reigns supreme. That I can agree with. That is actually one of the things that stops me from getting into AoE 3 is I love the AoE 2 engine so much. Wouldn't mind that. That would be interesting to see if that's the same amount of civs as Return of Rome. It would be such a slap in the face to AoE 3, which would be a downside for me, but I do really prefer the AoE 2 engine. Working on a concept, haven't given much thought for some weeks. Posting in Discord, great, would be good to see. Thanks, says Godflesh. Great to see you in chat, and thank you for submitting an awesome build. Can I defeat my opponent by getting him addicted to opioids? Get on that, Godflesh. That sounds necessary. Excellent. Okay. Next thing that I wanted to do, and I wanted to get in with you guys, was a shout out to another YouTube channel. This fine fellow over here is named Jimenez Lai, and he has been a fan of the channel for quite some time, of my YouTube channel. While I haven't fully marathoned his channel yet, he is a architecture historian and an architect, and he has a video here that I wanted to show like the first 20 seconds of. Take a look.
Hi everybody, it's Jimenez Lai here. Today we're going to talk about Augustus Primaporta and why the baby matters. You've probably seen the statue before, Augustus, the first emperor of Rome, standing like a god, commanding the world with this raised hand and idealized body. But what is that at his feet? A tiny, naked baby on a dolphin? Today we're going to dive in and find out why this baby is not just cute, but structurally critical.
That is a great premise for a video. I loved that idea. And so if you guys have any interest in art history, architecture history, and similar, I would highly recommend checking out Jimenez Lai. I will post his the video here in the chat, and definitely go give him a sub, drop him a comment. I think he could be sick. And oh, pardon me. Yeah, Godflesh mentioned the Opium Wars because the slides went pretty fast. That is entirely my fault. I didn't want to linger too long on just one topic this video, but definitely take a look through, especially once Godflesh posts the link. So yeah. Definitely go take a watch of Jimenez Lai. I think he has a really nice speaking voice too, which is very important for me. And he's been a supporter of my channel for like over 2 years. So drop him a follow if you're at all interested in his subject matter. Too bad Return of Rome wasn't as good. When you play AoE 1 after playing AoE 2, it's very weird and clunky. Yeah. What a hook. I'll definitely check his channel out. Yeah, exactly. It's an awesome hook. I think that he has real promise with his chosen topic. Now, the next thing I wanted to talk about is a bit broader of a subject. That being something that someone in a comment just said earlier. What was it? Yeah. Godflesh and Bub were both talking about after 3 Kingdoms debacle, I don't know anymore. I can't. I'm having a hard time getting hyped for an age game at the moment. I'm in kind of a similar position, and I'd love to talk to you guys about what I've been doing about it, because I think that just kind of like falling completely out of historical RTS and historical theory crafting as a hobby, that's not something I'm really interested in doing. So, but even then, I have been feeling less enthusiastic than I'd like to. And so here's the stuff that I've been talking about. For one, you guys may have seen I've posted some polls recently talking about other games. For example, most underrated historical RTS series. I posted like the 3 that people mention in the comments most often, because I actually don't know any of these. I mean, I know them, but I've never played them. People kept saying, how could you leave out Empire Earth? I would argue Empire Earth is not a historical RTS. It's partially a historical RTS, but it's partially not. Anyways. Now, I posted, and also I also mentioned, what are your thoughts on Warcraft 3? One of my personal favorite RTS of all time. I'd say it only comes second to Age of Empires 2. And I'd actually say I like Warcraft 3 better than Age of Mythology. However, the reason that I have been posting polls like this, and intend to do so more, is not just because I want to hear about other games, given that I'm feeling, a little out of love with the Age of Empires series at the moment, but also because I'd love to talk more broadly about game design and RTS games in particular, instead of just being married to the one. Even if I often, if not always, use Age of Empires as a framing device because I understand it best, and also because it's what most of you guys have some point of comparison for, you know what I mean? So because of this, that's one of the things that sparked my interest in the Total Overhaul series. Something that would allow me to not dump Age of Empires by the wayside. It's still a very valuable framing device, but would allow me to talk about things besides Age of Empires during this phase where I'm feeling less enthusiastic about the game and its direction. Now, I'd love to hear from you guys. Do you feel similarly? And on top of that, what are some other options that you think we could explore besides just like looking to other games and talking about the series more broadly? What are ways that we can kind of recapture the game for ourselves? You could say, oh, modding will do it. And that's true. I've thought about that a lot as well. But there's a few issues with that. One is that, not to say you shouldn't do it, and I still think that modding is the future for the game. And that's one of the reasons that we're going to be hearing from a modder shortly. But more notably, modding has the issue of, one, taking a massive amount of work, and two, having that massive amount of work be suddenly invalidated by a random patch. And that sucks. The idea that you could create this masterpiece and then have to rebuild it from scratch because some asshole changed, I don't know, some random line of code somewhere. That sucks. That's miserable. And I don't really know of a good way around that. That's not to say I won't continue championing modders on this channel. I absolutely plan on doing so, but it's not something that I think is the answer for me necessarily, even if it's one of the many avenues I plan on exploring. So yeah, what are you guys feeling in terms of a combination of burnout with the franchise and interest in other games, and how we can keep our love of historical RTS going, even if, and this is an if, we are feeling uncertain about Age of Empires 2, at least as of now. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let's see. I know it's not exactly classic RTS, but I got into Anno 1404. Want to try other games later. More of a city builder, but fights are there. They just aren't as important. Yeah, I've heard Anno is a really great series. I just don't know it. Warcraft 3 theory crafting would be awesome. Fun fact about that. I actually got my start in theory crafting online with Warcraft 3, because I'd been doing it before then. I'm sure many of us growing up would write down ideas in notebooks for our favorite games. But Warcraft was special because I got involved with a community for a mod in Warcraft on like one of those old ass forums, and I theory crafted a lot for that mod, and that was my first ever exposure with posting my work online. Didn't go well. I got fucking trashed because it wasn't great. But at the very least, it did start to build me a reputation, even in those very early days, for kind of weird designs that were a little bit avant-garde. Maybe more than a little bit. So yes, that is something I have... that's been in my blood for a while. Dionisio says, if you play Rise of Nations, recommend getting the CD version because Steam version unit counters are bugged. Ugh, that sucks. Godflesh says, Cossacks is interesting. It's pretty fun and kind of realistic by using the need of constant resources, being able to field hundreds of soldiers, but they die too fast and it's not that strategic. Garai says, Stronghold 1, Crusader, and 2 are pretty good, but the rest isn't prominent. Rise of Nations is Empire Earth, but in the style of Age of Empires, and Cossacks are difficult for me. Warcraft 3, greatest of all time. Yeah. Oh, that's Blizzard. Yeah, indeed. But it was Blizzard before they started sucking, which maybe is controversial, but I don't think I've liked a single Blizzard product since Warcraft 3. I think so. But again, Diablo 2, Warcraft 3, 2 of my favorite games of all time. Tommy Two Socks, yeah, I absolutely adore Age of Chivalry, Hegemony. Disappointing I can't share it with DE friends. Yeah, exactly. How amazing would it be if we could bring that into the game more formally? Like, there's so much freaking potential, dude. There's so much potential. But it seems to not be in the cards, at least as of now. Mod obsolescence is always sad. It would be wonderful if mods could, like, be built in a fixed version of the game, and when there was an update, the mod would not have to update the version of the game it's running. I don't know how hard that would be to do. It doesn't sound hard to me in comparison to other things, and I think it would be wildly beneficial, but doesn't seem like something that we're likely to get. Bub says, I love Stronghold for the focus on producing resources, including craftsman-made ones. Yes, I love those sort of systems, and I'd love to see it in other RTSs as well. I always found it weird that it takes ages to create a bow or carve a stone, and then training an archer or building a keep is done instantly. Yeah, that's something I would personally change from the Stronghold formula, but I do really like the core idea. It's on a very small scale, which I could see is the only like major downside, but blowing up that scale a little bit while keeping the core feel, I think could really work. I play other games since I'm kind of tired of playing AoE 2. Suzerain, Old World. I love combining history, myth, TTRPGs, CRPGs, board games, and 4X. Yeah, I think the amount of potential there is for genre bashing is massive. And the issue is, of course, cost, but there's ways to cut cost in game design, as I am learning in the process of designing a game right now. Age of Empires 2 used to have a very interesting mod called Age of Fantasy. There's supposed to be a version for DE, but it seems they just stopped working on it or working on it in silence. Yeah, that sounds sick. And Age of Fantasy was actually a name I had planned for a series on this channel at one point. I'll probably not do it in that direction, but I have some other ideas in that direction that could be fun. Age of Chivalry should be made an official DLC. Yeah, I think it's better than any official DLC we've ever gotten. And maybe better than all of them put together, but that could be a little too ambitious. Because we've gotten some good campaigns over the years. Let's not kid ourselves. Even though I've had my serious problems with AoE 2 monetization, we have had some good frickin' campaigns. But yeah, maybe if Age of Chivalry had its own campaigns, I think it would trounce the other DLCs. Let's see. Age of Chivalry, what a callback. Oh yeah. Golden Royal says Rise of Nations was good only as a kid. It's all over the place for what it tries to do. Yeah, it's kind of unfocused. It's cool, but it's unfocused. So there's lessons we can take from it. Age of Fantasy, we need it. Catch my liege, Fast Castle. That's awesome. Okay. In that case, before we move on to other topics, well, actually, looking at my Discord messages, it seems my guest needs a little bit more time. So let's talk about some other stuff while we're waiting for him to show up. Let's keep talking about historical games and what we can do to find what we want out of them. I will be also, in fact, I got an idea. I'll take some notes for my Total Overhaul series. Episode 2 and possibly Episode 3 planned for this month, by the way. What would be some elements in your ideal RTS game? Like historical RTS. Like in terms of systems. Would you want, for example, more complex units? Would you want heroes? Would you want more complicated resource production chain like in Strongholds? I'd like to hear from you guys, as well as like random chatter if you want. I'll take some notes. Chivalry did have a campaign. Did it? I mean, honestly, I could not tell you. I remember it must have had historical battles then. Remember the Golden Spurs battle being hard as hell. Definitely had scenarios. There you go. So yeah, if it had like a couple full campaigns, I think it would smoke everything else. There are a lot of total conversions for Rise of Nations that focus more on specific periods. Sounds like a good idea. If you can make your mod in code, you can remake it at the push of a button. Is that true? That sounds really hard to do, but maybe it's hard just because I don't understand coding. Okay. Fire Thire 7. If you can elaborate on that, please do, especially if you can post it to Discord. If you can provide like a brief guide for how to do that, that could be a game changer for a lot of mod makers. Gurai says Warcraft 3 got 2 very prominent mods that were released recently, Age of Warcraft and Chronicles of the Second War. And on Hive, there's plenty of interesting maps like War's Legacy. Yes, so that was one of the many reasons that Warcraft 3 was my favorite RTS of all time for quite a while. And only barely got nudged out by Age of Empires just because, like, frankly, Age of Empires, I like the subject matter more. I like history more than fantasy. Well, I like history more than other people's conventional fantasy worlds. Let me put it that way. And also, I love the Age of Empires engine. The Warcraft engine is really flexible, but wildly clunky, and you have to, like, do a lot of work to make it do what you want it to. But Warcraft had the best modding landscape of any game I have ever seen in my life. And Hive Workshop, look it up, it's awesome. Still just has shit tons of free assets that you can integrate into mods, no problem. I think it's fantastic. And the fact that Warcraft 3 on disc, I'd imagine, is still getting mods is incredible. God, I love Warcraft 3. It's a shame I don't have my copies anymore. Did you already finish the AOM Japanese segment? I did, actually. That was the first thing we went over. But if you have any things that you would like to say in that regard, Golden Royal, I'd love to hear. Godflesh says, question, what was the period you chose? Well, I was planning on saving that for the next episode, but there was one period that comfortably won the poll by like 20%, better than the next one, and that was From the Ashes, which was the period that I personally proposed. So maybe there's some amount of bias and people are like, oh, we should do what Robbie wants, but like, I do think there's a very strong case to be made why that is the best period to start with. So that is probably going to be the one we're going with. More unique units and regional replacements, completely agree. I always think there should be more involved in religion and religious conflict compared to how central religion was in life. Asymmetric tension parallel to combat maybe, or something impactful in historical RTS. Cannot agree more. I think that would be amazing. I have an idea for involving religion more centrally in my plans for Total Overhaul. And you've seen some on the channel already. I made a video about religious stuff before, but I have ideas that I think can make it even better. Warcraft 3 had wild mods, could not agree more. In my ideal RTS, I give every faction their own bespoke mechanics, some even with unique resources. Could not agree more. I think that's a very good idea. I'm a big fan, as you guys know, of differentiation and making it so that each faction plays as differently as possible. I think that will be really, really important. I guess I'll pause it first then. Need to watch it first. You got it, Golden Royal. What I would like in historical RTS is to show the cultural progress of those societies, like Britons becoming the English, Celts becoming the Scots, Franks becoming the French. I think that would be sick. I do have an idea for that for Total Overhaul, which I did mention already, where if you divide things into discrete time frames, what you can do is you can potentially have a game evolve from one time frame to the other. And instead of just resetting the tech tree, you would just like build upon what you had already built in the previous era. I think that would be insanely cool. Very hard to do, but insanely cool. And I think it's a way of showcasing what you're going for there. Though if you're looking, I like confined windows in design. But if you are going for a broader scale window, I bet, funny bone, I bet there is other ways to get what you were going for there. I love when resource gathering, crafting, and city building mechanics play a big role in strategy games, but it can be tedious to balance it well, especially in RTS as opposed to grand strategy games. Yeah, completely agree. That is really tough to do. Though something that was posted in Discord, I forget by who. No, I think I know who. It was that, what's his name? Oh, his name's in Greek, so I can't understand it. Where is it? There it is. Let me frickin' pop the Discord open for a moment. Boom. And boom. There we go. Let's see what we got here. So it was this post that really struck me, where Frazzoli, that's who it was. Excellent. His name was previously in Greek. Was like how I posted this meme. How I imagine my Age of Empires to look, how it ends up looking. I think that this post, while it's like funny, right? It's just kind of goofy. I think it's like very true. And it does, and Epic Sea Dragon said it best. While I love the game, this is kind of the reason I don't play it anymore. You can't build nice cities unless you're in a non-competitive setting. Game meta is too fast-paced. Can't take the time to take the time. I know this belongs in it. It doesn't matter. Epic Sea Dragon. It's awesome here. Board one game was too easy and built Constantinople. That's hilarious. And it's cool too. And so I think that there's a lot of like kind of goofy merit to this topic that I think many people would not necessarily see as being as noteworthy as it is. People really want to be able to build beautiful cities and for the game to be aesthetic, because like Age of Empires is a very beautiful game, but you don't really see that beauty as much outside of campaigns. Like once in a great while, you'll get this like beautiful cinematic picturesque moment. And so I think that something that incentivizes and enables beautiful cities is a good idea. In fact, I'm going to put that down in my notes. Incentivize and enable aesthetic city building. There's probably a better word for it. But yeah, something that inspires beauty and feels correct. Like, feels correct to history. And I think that's a similar thing to warfare, right? Because when you put armies to war in Age of Empires, it's usually like 20 assholes being stutter step microed against 10 assholes, and then they all die. Like that, I don't know, that doesn't feel like historical warfare to me. I don't know about you guys. I'd love to hear what you think, because I think that sort of aesthetic element is really useful and important. I love Charlemagne's history in the Regnum Francorum. Yeah, I agree. I think that's an awesome period of history. Good to see you, Hone. Gorai says, StarCraft 2's Nexus co-op mod has very diverse factions, and some even have their own resource or different mechanics like the others. Like there's a faction which has uranium instead of Vespian gas. That sounds awesome. That sounds like exactly the sort of thing that people probably want to see, but I think a lot of major studios are scared because it's a risk, and it's not only a risk, but it's also like a pretty substantial resource sink. And they're like, oh, if we sink all these resources and it doesn't work out, then we're shit out of luck. So let's play it safe. And so I think a lot of it does come down to a resource gate. But again, I think there's ways to cut costs to enable things like this. Agree. My hot take is AOM campaigns are fine when it's a mirror the whole game. I only remember the final Norse mission being the only one where you fought another faction instead of mirror in OG. I can see what you mean there. That is a fair point. Even then, though, the campaign was kind of globe-trotting, and I think a lot of people would like to see a globe-trotting campaign. So there's a truth to what you say. Manor Lord, based on what I'm hearing. Again, Manor Lord has pros, right? But I think that the scope is too narrow. I want a narrow scope, but not that narrow. And also, it's looking at things from a very close point of view rather than something a little more swept out. So I think people, at a guess, I think people would like to play an RTS game that actually feels like you are building an empire instead of, again, commanding, 20 assholes in a wasteland and they magic a house out of nowhere. I could be wrong, but that feels correct to me. Oh god, I got a blast from the past for you guys. Let's see if any of you remember this. Has any of you played back in the, I want to say the late 90s, early 2000s, the Lego Rock Raiders RTS game? Maybe? Maybe. The reason I bring it up is not because it was awesome and really fun for my young mind, but it actually had a mechanic I think is wildly underrated. And maybe other games do this. I don't have a great comprehensive knowledge of other strategy games, but maybe there's another game that does this. In the Rock Raiders game, your units, if you wanted to build a building, they had to go take resources out of a drop site and bring those resources to the build site for you to build the building. That's fucking sick. That's awesome. I'm sure it gets really, really complicated on grand strategy levels, but I think it's freaking awesome. So if any of you guys remember that, tell me if I'm wrong. Tommy says Northgard is obviously ahistorical, but they made some big innovations. Yeah, I agree. Northgard is cool. It's not my favorite. Like, it personally doesn't play in a way that I am really drawn to, but I respect it. Garai says, me and boyfriend tend to play against AI. Try my best to always build a nice city. We also build huge armies before attack. I think a lot of people play that way. I think that is a common way people play all RTS games, but especially Age of Empires. We're reaching levels of baseness unseen before. AoE 3 is kind of mediocre in that regard. There is not University Wonders drop-off camps. Houses give more pop space and the forts are so lame. Yeah, like, I bet you anything that giving incentives to build beautiful bases based on mechanics will reflect in pro scene. Like, for example, even if you don't want to do the thing where villagers have to bring resources to the drop sites, I think that there is something still to be said for example, if you are not building within a certain radius around a town center, you build like 3 times slower. I don't know about you guys, that makes sense to me, and that will incentivize things to be kind of bunched up, and maybe say something like, oh, you have to put down roads or units are slow as shit, suddenly roads are important, and suddenly base building becomes way more of a big deal. So maybe there's ways to do it more, less proscriptively. Hoop Thrower, hey Hoop Thrower, good to see you, man. 20 versus 20 guys work surprisingly well as colonial warfare theme. That is true. And I think that, like, there is a place in the world for small scale battles. I would love to see RTS that kind of commits to that more. But in my experience for Age of Empires, unless you're trying to tell very specific stories with it, it often feels weird. Like, oh yeah, this one militia actually represents 60 militia. But you can't see it because they're invisible. I remember kind of feeling that way when I was younger. I remember at one point I tried to make a Battle of Stirling real life scenario when I was younger, like how big it actually was. And I soon realized that there were so many men at the Battle of Stirling that they couldn't fit on the map that I wanted. And then I also realized that when I tried to like start the battle, unless I triggered every single group to move independently, I could not group and patrol fast enough to get them into the frickin' fight, and I just wanted to watch a cool battle. So I think there's another way of doing it that I'll mention in a second, but let's see some other comments first. Theoray7 says, so there's the Genie utilities, a code library for interpreting the data file. They are available in various coding languages. Then you write your mod as a series of changes for the data file. Cool, that's really interesting. Huh. Okay, if you can put that to some sort of actual like guide for people, I think you'd get a lot of interest in that. Even if it's not like a super comprehensive one. I can only kind of imagine it theoretically. I watched an essay about Rock Raiders, but that's all. Oh, it's awesome. Mayor Lords is banished on steroids. Yeah, that's a good concept. Awesome. The old Sierra City builders did the resource storage harvest build site thing too. Like Pharaoh and Caesar. Aussie Empires makes beautiful maps. Check his channel out. Yes, I fully agree. Aussie Empires makes fantastic maps. I think I've shouted him out before, but I'll do it again. Aussie Empires is awesome. Do it. I don't like to rush it, which is why I never got into PvP in general. Yeah, I'd love to be able to cater to the competitive side without compromising the casual experience. And I think that maybe city building incentives is part of the way to do it. I play Age 3 with my brother against AI. Recently played Age of Mythology, We're Told, Arena of the Gods. How is that? I'd love to hear. Oh, nice. Let me see. Our guest is ready to go. Okay, sent. Excellent. Let's pull up my Discord with him. Alrighty. Start a video call. I'll turn off my camera. Doodaloo, doodaloo. Hello there, Pwner. How are you doing, my friend?
Hey, I am doing well.
Excellent. Everyone, say hello to Pwner of Souls. He's the creator of the Empire Craft mod. Pwner, we are live. I'd love to see what you've been cooking, as well as talk about some other stuff if you are interested. But if you would like to show us what you've been working on first, I'm ready if you are ready.
All right, well, let's give it a whirl here. Let me get my game booted up real quick.
In fact,
yeah, thanks.
Yeah, of course.
Got some last minute things I'm trying to get done here, so appreciate everyone's patience.
That is completely fine. So, in Pwner's mod Empire Craft, not only have there been some huge developments there that I'm hoping we get to hear about later, but also he makes his own unit sprites. And part of the thing that we're going to be doing today with him is seeing a few of the things he's created, as well as get a bit of the behind the curtain on how he does it, if he is willing to reveal his trade secrets, of course. So yeah, show us what you got, my friend.
All right. Yeah, I don't know if the secrets are all that worth it here, but we'll certainly give it a go here.
Totally.
I'm just looking for my music volume. Turn that off. Is my sound coming through at all?
I am hearing you perfectly fine. I think I'm hearing... Yep, hearing game sounds.
All right. I'm actually going to turn the game sounds off real quick because they're not quite matching up just yet, so bear with me. Let me just turn sound volume off.
Totally.
All right, yeah, so thanks for having me on again. I really appreciate it.
Of course, man.
Really appreciate the first shout out. So yeah, I've been working on some models just because I wanted to kind of first just, test out my mod with some ideas, make it more StarCraft-like, but I always had, some modeling stuff in mind. So one of the big things I'd like to eventually do here is do some villager skins, which, seems like a lot, which it is, but hopefully in the near future I can get some of these done. So anyways, these are what would be eventually the Mesoamerican villager skins.
The screaming.
Yeah,
awesome.
I don't know why this synced up. It should be the hammer sounds. That's what I was trying to turn up.
Oh, that's
But
awesome,
anyways,
though. I kind of
Yeah.
love it. No, that's sick, man. And the fact that you're doing regional villager skins is awesome. It's something that I think many people have wanted for the game for a long time.
it's something ever since I played the Conquerors, I've wanted this skin so bad. Like they did, I'm sure for the time back in the 90s when they made the Conquerors, they had the Meso Monk and building set, and they probably thought like, wow, that's super great. But, I wanted to go the extra step and, see what a fully fleshed out Meso Civ would look like.
Totally.
Graphically and otherwise. So, yeah, so I've gotten started on these guys, just doing some different death animations. Oh,
Woo.
there he goes. Woohoo.
Doing the
That's really
worm.
cooking there.
That's sick.
Yeah, sorry.
That's
This is
awesome.
like one of the last minute things.
No problem, no problem. It's kind of awesome at the same time.
Yeah. So, anyways, yeah. So I'm doing different animations. So far, I have the build one done. I've had this a while ago, but there's some kind of developments that allowed me to actually start making skins, which I'll talk about in a little bit. So, anyways, the first one I got going in the game was this one, Scout Infantry. So I kind of use this as a test unit to get all the shading and everything correct. So this is kind of one of the first guys other than the villager.
Nice.
And yeah, I think it turned out okay. I think the animations are smooth enough. The shading kind of matches other units in the game, which is very tricky and hard because there's a lot that goes into that and making it all work. But
Totally.
anyways,
Yeah,
very,
I can only
very happy with
imagine.
how they turned out.
And he is using the classic Mesoamerican bronze axe, the name of which escapes me at the moment. Timaz Tepotli is a guess.
Yeah, it should be Chipotle. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
the bronze axe. So, the reason for the bronze axe is I did some more digging on the history of it, and part of the the system the Aztecs employed, with their flower wars and everything, every tribe was required to give them some bronze, basically as like a tribute. So in the mod, these guys are like my most basic infantry. They're based on the famous Mesoamerican codex that has the different castes of warriors.
Yep.
So they're intended to be like the lowest guys on the rung, and they just kind of get the bronze axes that everybody tributes to them. So I thought that'd be kind of a neat thing to show in game. Yeah, got death animations. So these guys are fully animated out, and these are all UHD renders as well. So the tool that I have, I can do both the standard definition and the UHD. So people that like to play, in the enhanced mode here are able to enjoy these as well. So anyways.
Pretty fantastic. And you got more besides that too. Jesus.
Oh, yeah. So we got our atlatls, which just, they just needed to be here. I mean, the game was just missing them terribly, so I had to make them.
Fully agree. They look awesome. They look fantastic. A question. How hard are icons to make? Because I noticed that you're using placeholder icons for them.
Yeah, icons are not hard to make. What's frustrating and annoying is that you can't have them in a data mod.
Oh, really? What the fuck?
Yeah, I don't know if you remember when you did your cast with Tyranno and those guys. He's talking about his mod, about his Chinese civs that he's implementing. But you have to have, as a modder, you have to have multiple mods in order for people to enjoy your full work.
Yeah, because Arjun was the one who I actually had on.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No problem. Yeah, that's totally fine. Just I was like, when did I get to talk to Tyranno on screen?
Oh, sorry. Or I think you were sharing about his mod, but you have to have so many different mods together for people to play it. Like you have to have AI as separate. I'm pretty sure icons, some other things all have to be separate. There's a limit to the file size, which is really frustrating. It's so many barriers to entry. And it's especially frustrating because I designed this mod more as like a multiplayer beatdown kind of mod. Mm-hmm. And so if you tell people who are just like queuing up, okay, go back out, go download like 3 more mods, then come back in, maybe your spot will still be here when you come back type stuff. It's a lot of folderol that I think people don't need to deal with. Like if it could all be, one mod for all your stuff streamlined, it'd be super cool. But
folderol is the word for it.
Yeah. But anyways, I have done custom icons before, so I've modeled them, but I just choose not to put them in at this time, just because it's just too much extra effort. So anyways, here's the atlatls doing atlatl stuff.
Looks gorgeous, man. Looks really impressive. Like it's one of those things where even just you putting these into the game means that possibly like down the line, if a modder is like, man, I've always wanted an atlatl in my mod, then like they have precedent. They suddenly have like knowledge that it can be done.
Oh, absolutely. Plus, anyone that wants to have access to these can just download my mod. So most of these are already in. So these meso units I'm showing off are in the mod currently. And anyone that wants to have access to these, like if you're working on a project or something, like please feel free to come and use these. I want these assets to be available to everyone so that they can, make some dream scenarios they've always wanted to make. Like get some atlatl throwers going, get some other cool stuff rocking.
That's awesome.
Have fun with it, guys. So
nicely done. Then thank you so much. Very generous. Okay, what do we got now?
We got some hive throwers. So these guys are fun. I love that little like waving animation. He's got, like,
he's getting the bees away of his face.
I thought that was like a nice little extra touch. It's like getting swarmed.
Yeah.
Anyways, these guys are super fun. So worked on these guys because we now have the ability to do the terrain damage thing. So I was like, what would make sense for the meso to have, AoE damage? I kind of die inside every time I see like a Mesoamerican mangonel because it's like, guys, that's just not, fitting with the whole meso theme. So anyways, I thought, how do we do cool meso stuff, AoE damage, so that way, especially as I played the mod, like they don't currently have AoE damage until I put these guys in. So it's a good way to deal with like lots of trash really fast and in a way that I think is like acceptably almost historically accurate. Anyways, these guys are fun. Missing some animations, so they do look a little bit jank right now, but they do really well. Like this area of effecting.
Not the bees.
The bees. Yeah. So I love that damage over time. So,
And you said
they're a high gold unit.
You said that this was possible before the Ketons came out, but now it's just way easier to do.
Yeah. You could put there's actually a modder who does the multiple buffs mod, and he's had stuff like this. The guy's just like an incredible modder. He's like my modding sensei, but he's figured out tons of stuff like this prior to that. And so it kind of already existed because we found out we could put a lot of the aura effects of the Caravanserai on units and projectiles and stuff.
Mm.
And he kind of like pioneered a lot of that stuff like really, really early and figured
That's
that out.
amazing. That's
Yeah,
so
it was
cool.
cool. Yeah, it was really fun. So like I figured out a couple of things like that too. With the I actually put it on a knight unit. I gave a knight unit the Caravanserai effect before it was available in the game as like a aura buff through the Centurion. And
Sick.
I just had to turn it into a building that kind of moved. So clunkily enough worked, and now it's just way easier.
Look at this.
Yeah, so up next, I had to make this. So I was gonna try to finish up some Mezzo units for everybody to see because my goal for the mod is I kind of have the Americas sandwiched all into one big happy family because there's just not enough assets like there are for the European civs
Yeah, indeed.
to do a full like Mezzo or full Inca.
Happy
So
family, massive scare quotes.
yes, absolutely. So, the idea was like I'm trying to slowly separate them out so I can just do, Mesoamerica and kind of have that just be its own thing. But I took a break from that because I wanted to, try doing some armor, try some guys that, more, walk versus run, and just, try some of these things, try armor, try to get them to look well. So this is my Varangian Guard, which I think turned out not too bad.
I think they're great.
Yeah, so very fun unit. Yeah, I had a lot of fun doing this. I have Varangian Guard in the mod right now, so they're a mercenary unit trained from your town center. They cost a lot of gold, but they train instantly. And I really wanted to have them well represented. So I had previously the Norse Warrior, which I think looked okay-ish enough, it still fits, but I wanted one that looked, specifically, Varangian Guard, kind of had that more, Byzantine armored up. He's got, like Lamellar plus chainmail stuff. So
it's amazing how well traveled the Norse were because they speak perfect Nahua.
They're really good at speaking. Yeah, I mean, wherever they go, they just assimilate.
And then hack people to death. No, it's awesome. That's really fantastic, man. And they just, again, the fact that you got the shading, you got death animations, you got attack animations, it's an enormous undertaking.
Oh yeah, it's a lot. To come up with a lot of these animations. I mean, it's quite a task here. Like even some of these death animations, and there's always like some stupid stuff. You're going to town on it, and then you realize like, oh shoot, like the shield is deforming. So this one just had some annoying things like ready to render it, and then I realized like the shield was like squishing outwards when it died. So it's like, okay, why is it doing that? You got to go jump back in, figure all that stuff out. There's always something. So yeah, there's probably tons of errors in all these, but.
Okay, so to briefly catch up on chat, and if you guys have questions for Pwner, please put them in chat as well. But just to catch up the things I have now, Dionysio, in regards to the earlier villagers, said the builders scream in pain because they are not paid for their work.
Yes.
And then also on the villagers, Bub says, considering their standing still model, I'm almost disappointed their walking animation isn't based on Zoolander going to the mine.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Maybe I'll do that one for the mining walk. There
That's
you go.
So fun. Is it a question for you? Is it possible? Is the time to make alt Vil skins very different compared to military units? I always assumed it would take so much longer because you need different sprites for every task Vils can perform. The mod is beautiful. I love the shields. What's your take on that?
Yeah, that's actually a super good question. So yeah, like doing a unit like this versus a Vil, obviously the Vil is going to take infinitely more time, just because. I mean, you look at the villager; he's got so much stuff going on right here.
Mm-hmm.
He's still moaning. But yeah, there is a lot. There's a lot of stuff that you can do to recycle. Like for instance, their idling animation is actually something that I kind of copy pasted. So like you can reuse certain ones, like the running animation. I can use that multiple times and just kind of tweak it. The biggest and hardest thing is like when you embark upon doing a walk or run cycle, like that's really critical because if that looks jank, then the whole unit's going to look really jank. Like I used to have a really awkward and horrible run animation for these guys that was really bad, and so I had to fix it up a little bit so that it would look better. But now that I've cleaned it up and I kind of like where it's at, for making all the other things, like I can have him holding stuff, I can have him doing stuff, and it's generally going to be a lot better. once you get like the main like villager, and then from there I can kind of just add on. But yeah, it's certainly going to take quite a bit longer than the normal unit.
Total. Oh yeah, totally. I quite like how they jog rather than just like stride. Oh, that guy's still going. Man, he's going crazy.
He's still going nuts, man. So anyways, here I'm gonna try to do an attack, see if I can get these guys to their normal idle stance. There we go.
Yeah, if they
I do
can-
actually have.
Hmm?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, I was gonna say, if you were actually gonna go attack those Atlatl, I'm guessing they would just eat shit and die before they even touched them.
I think so. Let's see if we can do the attack animation. That's one thing I forgot to put in some units to show you. But yeah, in the mod, they're supposed to be faster, so I gave them the same kind of like jog animation as like an eagle warrior or something else, because I want them ultimately, like, they would start as a normal villager, but then you buff them into like, you know, more fast moving kind of guy. Yeah, he's not, not gonna make it. Not gonna make it. Okay.
Nice
that's
try.
fine.
Another thing from chat is people seem to quite like the hive throwers. One comment describes them as watermelon infantry. Another says they look like they're bowling, but it's a cool idea. And another comment said, it would be cool if the bees could debuff the enemy, like they're distracting them. Is that possible to do?
It depends on what you wanted to do, but sure, you know, you could lower their armor. I gave them regen because like I like the idea of them just being stung to death. You know, that just sounds awesome. But
So you're effectively
yeah, you,
putting like you're making like a dummy invisible unit with an aura. Is that how it works?
yeah, that's how the currently the mounted treb works. So when the projectile dies, it turns into a building essentially, and the building is just there that's doing, you know, negative regen
Yeah.
on people. And so, you know, part of the reason why it looks like a green bowling ball is so terrible. So I actually modeled, you know, a beehive inside that. Like I got the idea from watching Apocalypto, you know, the scene where the guy takes the he's got a wrapped up leaf and you're like, what's inside? And he throws it and there's a giant hornet nest in there and everyone starts panicking. So I have a fully like rendered out animation of the beehive like coming out of the leaf wrap.
Cool.
But it, for whatever reason, causes the projectile not to turn into the building, and so I'm trying to figure out how to fix that. Yeah. So like I try to follow like all the steps. You know, there's always like you follow all the steps where, you know, this is how the mounted trebuchet works, and you're like, okay, I got everything working just right, and then there's something I'm missing. It's probably like some integer somewhere I need to like plug in here, and then it'll all work. But yeah, it's
So
supposed to
fiddly.
like
Jeez.
open up it very fiddly. So it's supposed to open up and reveal the hive, and then, you know, then the bees, you know, do their thing from within. But anyways.
Really cool though. The fact that you thought about all that is awesome. Another question: do you plan to change the Kamayuk, or are you happy with that one?
No, I am planning to change the Kamayuk. I'd like to make it a more and I forget the weapon that the Aztecs have, but they have something kind of similar, like a very long spear. And I was going to give that to
God
the.
damn it! You had to say it. Oh shit!
I know now everyone's going to like searching wiki for.
Now I got to remember the name for it. Pardon. Carry on.
Anyways, and I was going to make it, you know, more of an elite soldier, because in the mod you get one castle per game. If it gets destroyed, you can rebuild it, but you're limited. So like that's going to be your core unit. And right now that core unit is the Kamayuk. So, you know, your massive anti-cavalry unit has to be built from the castle. So I wanted to kind of do something like in kind, but very much more like mezzo flavored than the Kamayuk.
What you could also do is, when I was learning about the Mishtex, they had a really cool, unique kind of their own take on a spear, like the obsidian spear, where it had the spear point and then it had like a saw blade along either side. And in my Mishtec build, I made it such that they had kind of a Hulam style piercing attack, but the pierce hit on either side of the target. So they were like kind of long range, and they would like saw things they were stabbing past. So that could be a fun way to give it like a unique twist as well.
Yeah, I'm probably going to steal that. So thank you. That sounds fantastic, actually.
If you guys have other questions for Pwner, by the way, feel free to throw them in. But from here, if it's all right with you, man, I'd love to hear a little bit. Oh, do you have another thing before? Because it looks like
One last thing.
One last
I
thing.
got
Let's hear one last thing.
the best for last, hopefully, or the saddest. I don't
Yeah,
know.
let's see it.
So, anyways, we all know, you know, and love our typical boats in Age of Empires,
No, we don't.
but facetious here. But I decided to take them up to the next level. So
That's awesome, dude.
there we go. So I've always just really, really wondered what it would be like to have crewed ships and siege in the game. And that's something that I'm
Holy
really, yeah, really interested in embarking on and trying to see what that would look like or feel like in the game. So here's my, first kind of rendition attempt at putting, actual crewed naval ships into the game.
Yeah, that looks beautiful. God damn. Okay, at some point I'm going to be doing a gigantic fucking video about Navy, which I've been putting off forever. But look at that, they row it too.
And they row the ships.
Holy
Yes, sir.
shit. I love it.
Yes, sir. So I wanted to just go over the top with boats because boats, I don't know, I love boats. I've done sailing before. It's something that's really near and dear to me. But it always bothered me that you have these little like duck boats. And they're the size of like a rowboat, and it's supposed to represent this massive ship full of dudes and whatnot. So I thought, like let's put the dudes on there and see what it looks like. Does it
Yeah.
work within the game? How does it actually look? So
God, the
yeah,
rowing looks so good.
thanks, man. Yeah. So the rowing, lots of fun. Don't ask me how long it took me to do this one. This one quite a bit of time in figuring out things, but I used a lot of different techniques in Blender to get this to work. But I really wanted that whole aspect. Sometimes you see the oars on the ship and they're just kind of like derping back and forth, and
Yeah.
it's kind of like rowing, but like they're not even piercing the water. I wanted these to like fully submerge and look like it's actually rolling.
You
and
even have the
wanted to-
sail billow when it's moving.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
fantastic.
So that was a fun little adventure. Yes, sir.
Jesus.
So-
Okay. So you guys see why I brought him back on, by the way. This man is so freaking talented. Like, just the amount of time this must have taken boggles the freaking mind.
Yeah. That's why I don't have hardly anything else done. So you can blame the longship on that. So. And also because my horse that I made died earlier
Wow.
in the rendering process. But so yeah, this took quite a bit of time. But I really wanted to get this concept out there because this was to me really fun. Something I've always wanted to see in Age of Empires, just because I thought it would look so cool. So anyways, there you have it. There's it dying.
Oh, bye. That's awesome. Or I'm just gonna fall. Round of applause, dude. This is so cool. Do you have like a little fight set up for him?
Oh yeah, of course I do.
Of course you do.
Yeah, we
Of
got
course.
some fights going here. We're gonna
I
do some
gotta
battles
see
now.
how this shit looks.
Now, please bear with this battle. I found out in the course of doing this that apparently when you put a frame delay on warships, I don't know if it's a bug, but they go into like this chunky weird mode, so it's not going to match up with the archery. But so, anyways, they're just slightly off because the frame delay should be set to 17, but it kind of like bugs out the ships. So, anyways, here
see.
you have it: Viking longboat warfare.
And you even have multiple archers on each to represent the multiple arrows that longships fire.
Absolutely. So they fire 5 arrows. There are 5 unique archers on the hull or on the deck of the boat here firing away. They're not super great quality just because I didn't want my computer to blow up. So they are very much lower poly than many of my other units.
Oh, of course.
Anyways,
Gotta cram a lot of boys aboard that boat.
yes, sir. So, but it's interesting. A lot of fun techniques, learning about like just the process of learning how to do this was quite fun. And how would I do this? I just love the process of figuring it out. So, anyways, we can
Yeah.
move
Just
on to some other
spectacular.
things. But there you have it, people. The Viking longship.
Okay, comments that are coming in. These are fantastic. This is how ships should work. The rowing is badass. This looks incredible. Goddamn, that's dope. I love the rowers and the sail being blown by the wind only when the ship is moving. This should be sent to the official team. Forgotten better step up their game. Seriously! Now, a couple other things to mention that are questions for you from this.
Sure.
One, that's a lot of population for a single boat. Have you played around with the idea of ships taking multiple population or doing things like, as the same guy mentions in the next comment, being able to disembark their soldiers?
Yeah, already in the mod. So these I believe take up what's the number, like 3 to 5 pop, I think. So most warships do, because I wanted to limit the naval warfare. Part of one of the things that I try to do in Empirecraft is there are specific scenario maps that you have to play the multiplayer on for everything to work. And there's always a land path, if you will. So you'll never be in a map where there is not, a direct land path to your opponent's base to go fight them.
Yep.
And the idea for that is, I want the water battles to just complement the land battles. And that's, a big part of that is they should always be able to fight on land. The water is really just to create another dimension. Like if you have a little soft point where, you're doing all your economy and farms and stuff, but it's next to the water, somebody can go around your, highly fortified area, drop off guys, get you off your game, stuff like that.
Totally.
So yeah, they all have extra pop, as a way to kind of like limit their effectiveness, but they all transport units as well. So any warship in the mod will transport units, so it will fight and attack because they take up so much pop. There really isn't room, and I think it's just a better all around game design to have them be the transports as well, so that their usefulness isn't just limited to fighting or transporting. It's something, StarCraft really did well, I think, with the unit, the Medivac, because they gave it multiple functions. Because like Brood War, you had the dropship, and it was just to transport your guys, and that was pretty good. Like it was still a great unit. But when they put it into the StarCraft 2 and it became the Medivac, well, now it's your medic and it's your transport. It had multiple functionality. So like if you need to heal guys or do things, I'm a big fan of that. Big fan of the the modality.
Totally.
And having those
Though,
options.
as a Protoss player, medevacs were tilting as shit, and I hated them.
I was Zerg main, so yeah, I know. Every time I see one show up, it's like, oh no,
Yeah, God damn it.
what's coming out of there? Yeah,
I lose the early game. Whatever. Moving on.
yeah. Third base gone. Yeah.
Looks fantastic. Another question from the chat. Does the crew have other utilities other than visual, or at the moment are they just like a part of the ship body, so to speak?
Yeah, absolutely. So they are part of the ship body. They are baked into the animations, so they are not independent. I probably could do things like that. That would be very complicated and difficult.
Ambitious. Yep.
Ambitious. However, that was one of the things I've always been interested in, because these are all separated. Like I have the ability to do that. Like I can break these models apart into the various components. Like those 5 archers are all separate, rendered out guys and animated. So, or I guess I render the whole thing separately, but there are potential ways where I could, break them out. It's just very difficult. I don't know if the game currently supports individual units attacking while the other, main unit is doing stuff. I know you can do that in buildings currently. So, for instance, like
I was about to say that would be so cool to do.
That would be very fun. And that's one of the other things I'd really like, because, it's one thing to just, have them show up, shoot some arrows at some people, but it'd be quite another to, your boat's moving and everyone's still shooting and attacking and doing fun things while that's going on. Also, plans to make melee ships as well, because fire ships just, should be a unique unit in my mind. So
Yes.
I'm currently working on several melee versions, even of this ship, so I didn't have time to get that done, but this was intended to be more like a Ratha, where it can switch between the ranged mode and the melee. So
Nice. That's awesome.
yeah, ran out of time, and computers chugging along to try to just make this. So anywho.
Totally. So along those lines, another comment, I'm sold. Something that I wanted to mention is I love the idea of ships taking multiple pop, because and also having way more functionality, because if you look historically speaking, naval battles were vanishingly rare for the majority of history up until pretty much Lepanto. And when they did happen, they were usually among relatively small groups, like 10 to 20, maybe 40 ships per side. I think one of the exceptions would be the fucking one with Olaf Tryggvason. That had a couple hundred per side. So massive ship battles were vanishingly rare. And so having ships be these powerful Death Stars that have massive functionality but you can only have a few of is way more true to history and makes water play feel way more different and unique and exciting. And I think that is a big part of how water play could be fixed. Because right now having water units be just like stupid, like chunky, low damage ports of land units, I think is absolutely ass backwards of what it should be.
Yeah, 100% agree. My other thoughts on it too are that the way that they approach design is always this, triangle design. It's like, okay, the fire ship beats, this guy, and then the war galley beats, the demo, only if you have enough of them. And there's kind of this triangle that exists. But the biggest problem is that the triangle only exists like within itself, like as an isolated theater. So when you look at all the naval units, it's like we're only ever comparing them against other naval units. How do they compare against land units, land defenses, things like that? And where's the the give and take there? So one of the things I tried to do in the mod too is like try to give everybody an option for there to be counterplay from the land to the Navy in some way, shape, or form, because I think that's a key integral thing that's missing in Age, especially with a cannon galleon being so, long ranged and can pretty much take out anything from land. And there's lots of buffs for different civs like Spanish to make them even better. So the counterplay needs to be there to say, okay, how do we actually, engage these if I don't have a Navy or if I need time to get a Navy? And that kind of thing. And I'm kind of happy where they are in the mod right now. Like they're basically there is a we're having a massive land battle, and then somebody builds Navy, unbeknownst to somebody else, and I think I've got them, and then boom, a whole bunch of people just show up on my shores, and now they're wiping out my farmers, and it's like shoot, and now I have got to refocus everything back at the base, go put out that fire while I'm trying to, maybe assault their main base, stuff
Precisely.
like that. I like that aspect, yeah, because it really just creates the extra dimension, which I think is, where navies should be to really make it feel good. Because, a lot of times, like the feel bads are somebody else gets water immediately. You can't get back on water. You can never contest it again. And that's just the end of the game. And you wait with your trash army until they can, make landfall, which will be, an hour from now. So.
Oh, yeah. Along those lines, I think one of the things that, again, StarCraft does really well that I think can be ported is I'd love for ships to have carrier function, where ship crew can be dispatched on land to raid and be a piece of shit and then come rushing back when you need them to leave. I think that would not only allow ships to be much more impactful along the shoreline and again reflect history, but also you don't even need to make ships take 1 billion population space, both because they were kind of like self-sustaining to some degree. They were, as Honne points out in chat, many crew just like slept and lived aboard ships. And so the fact that yours take like 3 population, that sounds about right to me, even if you want to be like pedantic and specific, because most of those crew were kind of supported by their ship. And then if you had them also being able to go out and raid the land, I mean, this is not something I'm saying that you should necessarily do, because that sounds wildly difficult to do, but in an RTS sense, having ships be able to go and raid the land immediately sounds like a way to integrate them with the rest of the game, make them directly, dramatically impactful, and also to make them, again, feel like these expensive, dramatic Death Stars that your opponent needs to get rid of or needs to play around if they don't want to engage them directly.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more. I would love to see something like that, some kind of naval unit that has the ability to portage. The only game that I can think of that really has tried attempting that, and not in like a super great way, was Stronghold 2. They had that little Welsh boat guy. You could build a bunch of those, spam them out, but it wasn't a super great unit, so I don't know how viable it was, for that game.
Yeah.
But something like that, right? Where they need the modality, because what happens if you win water? Now you've got crap tons of resources tied up in water that are only useful on water, and kind of sunk that cost in. And then what is your follow-up then you've got to just adjust to doing land stuff. So if they had the modality to be able to win you water, win the rest of the game, all the better in my mind.
Totally. And it also means that in those historical battles where you do have massive naval engagements, to the player that will feel exciting and cool, because like, oh, I usually only get to play with like a couple ships at a time. Now I get dozens. I think that is absolutely sick. So with all of that, the only other thing I wanted to specifically ask you about before we open it up for people to talk to you, get your questions ready for Pwner. He is a very seasoned modder and a unit creator, so if you have questions, especially on that side, broader game design, that sort of thing, I'd love to have you ask him them over in chat. But the only other thing I wanted to ask for you in the meantime, specifically, Pwner, unless there's topics you want to go over, is how do you feel? Oh, that looks awesome. I really like that. They're even using the club that was a sign of like low rank warriors. That's a really nice touch, by the way, that wooden club.
Yeah, thank you.
The one other thing I wanted to ask you is, I don't know about you, but and we've kind of talked about this a little bit, but not to put words in your mouth. We've talked a bit about kind of falling out of love with Age of Empires regarding like recent stuff and how it's kind of making motivation feel less and things like that. What has been your take on how we can approach and engage with the game we love, even if we don't love the direction we're going in? What are your plans in that regard, if you have any? And do you have any other insights on the topic of age burnout and feeling frustrated with how the game is progressing?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I mean, I've been playing since the CD days, so I've
Same.
experienced stage burnout, several times. And for those of us, that have played this since the 90s, it's a very old game now, and it's crazy that we're still, modding and doing crazy stuff for it. And I think it has a lot of good points to it. It has a very, it's there are some annoying things right now about modding, but they're not like insurmountable if you want to do it. But it's always been a fun game to mod. It's the first game that I started modding with. So for me, that's kind of like some of the motivation is to be able to do cool stuff like this is just something I've always wanted to do. And now that I've kind of had some practice with 3D modeling and animation, I think it's really cool to see, just what could be possible. Could this actually be something someday that, would be in there? Would this be the definitive edition? I don't know.
Mm, yeah.
um, but it's hard because the modder one thing the devs need to understand when they do stuff like the 3K and this Victors and Vanquished and stuff that's really flop really hard, and or if it even has cool stuff in it. Like I know they put a lot of effort into the 3K. There's a lot of cool units. There's extra modding stuff, but they need to bear in mind when you do stuff like that too. Like, oh, there's extra tools, there's extra cool stuff you can do, extra things modders have as far as these different mechanics and stuff. But if you piss off the player base, there's less people that can enjoy that then. There's less people hanging out and wanting to be on the different discords and wanting to play because they're just like, this game's stupid, look at all these stupid things they're doing. So I'm not saying they should always play it safe, but they really, I think, need to engage more players when they try to make new content and expansions, because it seems like they're just searching around a lot of the time for what are people going to like, what are they going to enjoy. We don't know, we're going to like throw a dart on the dartboard and see if it lands anywhere close to like what they had in mind. And so that's a little bit frustrating. So there's a lot of people that have had issues with the game. There's a lot of issues with pathing still. It's things like that. If you're going to add on a whole other game section, like I'm super glad they added Xbox compatibility for everybody, and that's awesome because there's a lot of Xbox players that like I've played with wouldn't have access to the game without that being there. But it also did a lot of damage to the pathing that was okay before the Xbox crossover. So it's like the devs need to realize if you do stuff like this, you really have to make sure that it's quality, make sure that it's good. Talk to seasoned players. You're a prime example of somebody I would say, why don't they reach out to you and say, like, what do you think about this? How do you think this would be received? And so, I think unfortunately it lends a lot to just a feeling of the devs are kind of out of touch with the average player. And that just, I think, leads to additional frustration because players are saying like, nobody wanted the Woo and all the other 3K civs into the main game, and it's like that could have been a Chronicle, probably was a Chronicle. Just I would say just be more consistent. I think another big problem with that too is not just it's in the main game now. It's like you need to be more clear on the brand expectations, and that's something I think they have a hard time with, and they create brand confusion with things like 3K because it's like, is this supposed to be a Chronicle? Is this main game? Have main game be main game and be very strict with what it is and what it's supposed to be. Are they civilizations? Are they political entities? Like, what are they? Do they have heroes? Be consistent, because I'm sure a lot of people had a lot of problems with the way that they unrolled that, and had a lot of expectations for other cool civs that they wanted it to be. So anyways, that's just my thought on how the devs could improve, handle the situation going forward. Be very consistent, make sure stuff is consistent with the main game. Like if you want to do Chronicle stuff, make sure it's it's its own thing, and don't intertwine or confuse them, that kind of thing.
The one other thing I will ask is if you could impose one change on the game, even if it was like a pretty substantial change, it still could be one change only. What do you think is the one change you would make that you think would give the game the best chance of further success and longevity?
That's a really good question. Something I think would be interesting, again, I like pushing the boundaries. So like for my mod, I want to push the boundaries on what the engine can do, what the game can do, because I just want to see what it can become. But I think maybe some newer mechanics. But again, that's hard because again, it would change kind of the core of how Age of Empires works. But some of the new mechanics I think would be really cool. Maybe if it's a spin-off or a different game mode would be, let's try doing like actual siege warfare. let's do, guys on walls, maybe on boats too, and fortifications, and really, explore that. I think that's something that for a game trying to depict medieval history really, could take this thing to 11. If we had, proper siege battles and stuff like that would just create some cool stuff, I think. But, again, it's not in line with the main line of Age of Empires, so it'd probably be better if it was its own, like, separate content, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Totally. That makes perfect sense to me. And one last thing before I forget, and we'll go over to questions from chat and then give you a chance to talk about what you want to talk about if you have other things. The one last thing is the bane of many modders is when a change is made to the game and it completely blanks their mod and they pretty much have to reset all of their hard work. Has this happened to you before, and how have you dealt with it?
Yeah, I mean, it continues to happen. Like these animations not syncing up. I had no idea that putting a frame delay on the boats would make them fire kind of like a Chukanu. Like instead of doing a bulk volley, they will just do like they'll fire 2 arrows, then 1, then 2. It's just crazy things like that, things that you don't expect or anticipate. One of the things they did is they nuked one of my wonders, and I guess because I used to have a wonder. It was really fun. It was a Frank's wonder. They had 2 different wonders, and one was a wonder that was also a castle. It could fire arrows, it could train paladins, and it gave you a wonder victory. Like it did everything, and it was super fun and cool. And you had the options. Lots of people like building it, and then they made one drastic little change, and it just like wiped it all out. I can't figure out how to replicate it again because it created some massive issues after like one random update. So I guess as a modder, you just always have to roll with the punches and just, whatever they do. There's a lot of stuff that they will break and they'll just never get back to. So you just have to be extremely flexible and not get too in love with any one thing that you do, I guess. Because it could be, changed drastically. Like one of the things that I had to change was I used to have everything in just a data mod, and then they changed something about how the way different technologies worked. And then I had to add a whole XS script, which is like the scripting language for the game, because I have a function in here like StarCraft where if you lose a key building, all the tech related or associated to that building is lost in units with it. So, for instance, like if you need a university to unlock something, all those things become locked again until you build your new university. And so it used to just fully work with the data mod. I'd figured out a cool way to do it. That was a long time ago. And then I had to just build a full XS script, and have some people help me out with it. So,
Sheesh.
That's a lot of
wildly frustrating.
Yeah, so you do stuff like that because you just never know what's going to happen and how it's going to affect you and things like that. So if you're into modding, just be aware that things could change. You could have the perfect thing set up, like you could have your hive thrower and then try to get your cool animation you spent some time on, and it's just not going to work, because it's
Yeah.
you can't figure out how to implement it, or they change some slight things. So but yeah, there's a really good community though. So people at the different AOE discords have been super awesome. People I've met, particularly like to give a shout out to Butter Chicken, who made his SLD tool available for me to even be able to do junk like this. I was having a lot of trouble with some of the other tools getting these to work, and it really helped to automate the process. And I had to spend more time rendering stuff, but that was okay because the trade-off was, once it was rendered, just super smooth getting it into the game to be able to do player color, things like that really well. So
fantastic. That's
absolutely
great. That's really great. In that case, let's turn it over to you guys in chat. Anything that you want to hear Pwner's take on, any questions you have for him, any topics you want to hear us briefly go back and forth about. Let's take a look at what we have. For example, Bub says, the demo ship self-destroying on attack kind of kills the triangle, and cannon galleons and towers make things even messier. Imagine if the devs had tried to have the land meta revolve around people using the petard. That would be a disaster. Yeah, so I agree. Yeah, the water triangle, even if it were a proper triangle, it would still be kind of dumb. And it's not a triangle. It's like a 2-legged triangle because the demo is hardly a thing. Like,
right. It kind of loses its effectiveness the longer the game goes on. So yeah, it doesn't stay in place. That's where, in my mod, most civs have one ship. So for, balance wise, you got your one warship, you got your fishing ship, and that's really it. And you kind of got to work with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that helps simplify it a little bit more. Because if I gave every civ like 3 or 4 ships, it's like, okay, how do all these interact and how do they deal with the land units, stuff like that. Because I think it's more fun and interesting if there's interaction between the water and the land.
Absolutely. Another thing that Pwner says is it could be cool if there was a smaller Viking ship that had the ability to be hauled across land, like transformed to a land mode by its crew. I have no idea whether that's implementable, but it's something I've wanted to see for a while, and I put in my old Norse builds as well.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't tested it. I've been super interested to see if I could do that. I had an idea for making like a smaller version of this, only, it'd be a rowing and then a portage, so units would be able to take it and then maybe use it as a battering ram.
Oh, that's
So,
awesome.
yeah, they would just like basically take the ship, lift it above their heads and like smash the gates in with it or something.
Mm.
So like that could be fun. I don't know if it's implementable. I don't know because I haven't experimented with it yet. You'd have to make it so that when it got close to a piece of land like this, it would transform because
Yeah.
I think maybe, if you had the Ratha thing, I don't know if it would kill itself if it's not touching a valid tile. So
Yeah, exactly.
tough to try out and test. Yeah.
Maybe something with the unload function that the unload deletes the unit, replaces it with a new unit. I don't know. It'd be interesting.
Yeah, not sure if that'd be viable, but yeah, it'd be fun to play around with. Like, there's a lot that could be done that would make it really fun.
Totally. On the topic of naval battles, Tommy Two Socks says the most significant naval battle for the English monarchy for a long time was William Atheling losing against a French rock, which is a pretty interesting, obscure little history reference there. But
That's very cool. I have to look that up. I'm actually not familiar with that piece of history. That does sound quite fun.
Yeah, there's also a really interesting Scottish naval battle when the Norse kingdom of Skye, like the islands of Skye, were fighting against the Scots. They had a couple of pretty big naval battles for the time. Like I think again, like 40 or 50 ships, which is pretty freaking huge if you think about it. Though I don't think they were big ships. Another one, Forgotten Empires has gotten sleepy. We need something else. We need modders to show it's possible, like what we're seeing here. Between V&V, Return of Rome, mobile games, not thinking outside of the box, it's frustrating. Couldn't agree more, and that's very much in the line of what we were thinking of. Bub also mentions there was a glitch when you were showing off the Mezzo Vills, where two of them turned into regular female villagers when fighting. I don't know if that was noticed or if that's something
I caught that.
nice.
Yeah, I mean, you're seeing the Mezzoville. I literally rendered those out this morning, so I'm seeing it first as you're seeing it. So
Nice. Yeah. I mean, it looks pretty
It's,
freaking
super
good for a draft.
super
Yeah.
jank.
Uh,
Yeah, I have a like a standard definition version from like the early days, but it's got all kinds of issues. But yeah, I
Totally.
kind of knew it was okay, but yeah, lots
Here-
of bugs still to figure out.
Blue Bedouin says, "I don't want a Japanese faction for AOM. I want Sumerians." Do you have any thoughts on the Age of Mythology Japanese? We did lead the episode with that, but if you're not an AOM guy, then totally fine if you don't have thoughts on it, Pwner.
No, I am very much an AOM guy. I love me some AOM. Like, love it. Absolutely love that game. Played hours and hours. Beat all the campaigns. Followed the Trident and the Atlantean one, and then I didn't really do much with Tale of the Dragon. I didn't play that, and I haven't played the Retold yet.
Yeah.
But I love AOM. It's one of my favorite games. I actually, when I was in high school, I preferred that over Warcraft 3 and games like
Cool.
StarCraft. It was
Yep. Warcraft
my-
3
my
was
main-
my love. That was the one I played the most. But AOM was like
Yeah.
a close third after it and AOE 2. If you had to add a faction to Age of Mythology, what would it be?
Oh boy, I listened to your Japanese notes. Japanese would obviously be so sick. Aztecs would be cool. There are some mods that exist for the existing, the old school sepia toned Age of Mythology that explore this. They've got Aztecs and Japanese and some other civs. Aztecs, I've seen 2 different iterations of Aztecs, and they're both wild and awesome, and I love them.
Yep.
But yeah, Aztecs would be super fun because I'd just like to see what they would do with them. And with some Aztec myth units, that would be fun. Japanese would obviously rock. Another one that I would love to see would be India. I think India would just be cool. I mean, I'd love to see like Ganesha, esque units like stomping around, crushing people, and like Kalis like going nuts on people. That would just be amazing. So,
Well, you're gonna get your wish with Japanese. That's the thing we were reviewing at the top of the episode. That is officially announced as of like, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago.
yeah, I'm excited to see what they look like. So
Yep,
I've
totally.
seen a couple of screenshots. Like they look interesting, but
Totally. For me, from my take, a little too conventional, but we'll see. Maybe they'll surprise me. Then let's see what else we got. Yeah, okay. Max also adds that even if Age of Empires 2 did try to listen to us, their overlords may say no, which is true. There's always going to be annoying politics behind the scenes for what's going on. But I don't know. I feel like there's a way. There are ways to still slink around that. Not sure yet. I don't know the full inside scoop, but I gotta believe that there's something going on.
Yeah,
Oh, pardon. Yeah, you were going to say?
No, I just, the way it looked from this latest DLC, it's almost like, they gave out that big, update beforehand because they're like, hey, look at all these free things we're giving you. Because I think they maybe anticipated some of
Yeah,
the blowback from
I
the
think so
DLC,
too.
unfortunately, and it kind of looked that way. But anyways, sorry, I
Totally. No,
digress.
you're completely right. Godflesh asks, how many units have you designed and implemented over the years?
You're pretty much seeing what I've done so far. I mean, I've got a couple more that I'm cooking up. I was hoping to have a few more other villager concepts to show off today, because I'm working on different ones. I'm trying to work on the most needful ones here, like the Aztec, Mesoamerican type villagers, just because, I think those are needful. I think I have a, Moorish, sub-Saharan African civ that needs villagers really badly. I've started on that. And then for fun, I've also started on an actual monk villager set for
Mm,
my crusading order
nice.
uh,
That's fun. That's
for
really
fun.
fun.
So yeah, you guys are seeing mostly what I've got so far. You were going to see a cavalry unit, but however, it did die in the process from making it from the PNGs to the DDS files. So rip horsey.
Nice. Uh, Tommy Two Socks adds both that's brutal in terms of mod being nuked by a random change, but also he adds demo ships are both wildly overpowered and unusably bad at the same time. Insane on shallows against land armies and not very good at giving dimension to naval fights. So it's too strong and swingy at what it's actually good and kind of bad at what it's designed to be good at. Um, yeah, it's a kind of a disastrous design in my experience.
Oh, absolutely. I remember like good story about demo ships. It's my best friend's birthday today, so by the way, happy birthday! You're a hoser. You know who you are. Um, and I remember one time we were playing, the original. I think it's like either Conquerors or Age of Kings, and he got so mad at me because we were playing on rivers, and there's just the one shallow
Yeah.
to get to the bases,
Yeah.
and I just had it like swarming with demos, and I had my guys on the other side. He's like, "Come get me." I'm like, "No, you come get me." And finally, he just got so mad because I was taking forever to go across that he just came at me with just this massive army, and I just had a pile of demos there, and with
Ugh,
like 20 demos, like, his whole force is just like obliterated. He got so
gross.
it was, it was a fun game though, maybe
Yeah,
more for me, but
sounds so fun. Uh, another commenter adds the Sami would be cool for Age of Mythology, no doubt about that. But Max also adds, any plans for your mod Pwner for an East African civilization?
probably not for a while. If I did do that, I'm trying to shrink the regions down just because modding is extremely time consuming. So like I don't want to bite off more than I can chew. So the regions I'm trying to target are like all of Africa. I'm trying to like smush them into one civ. So it's like you got your Africa civ and then your like European civ and then your other guys. So I'm trying to do things like that just because the kind of scope of things I'm trying to work on for fun.
Yep, exactly.
And
And
the amount
also,
of
I
time.
bet having the assets in place is really important too.
Yeah, there has to be assets from the main game because I can't really make a civ if it's like do everything yourself. I want to maybe attempt that, but that would just take lots more time and time that I don't always have. So
Hmm. Al says, "Did Robbie ever do a Somali Civ concept?" I have not yet, though it's on my list of things to do, and I have done a Swahili concept. Godflesh adds, "Do you think it's possible to make a system of intricate counters between units, like separating crossbowmen from archers, and both of them being really different?" I have strong thoughts upon this. And Pwner's in kind of an interesting place to discuss this because your mod plays like StarCraft. So, based on your experiences, how feasible is it to have units be like very different from each other? And given that each of your factions has a completely unique roster of units.
yeah, I mean I already do that in this mod. A lot of that was actually inspired by watching your videos because I
Sick.
actually started watching your channel. I think the first video I ever watched was the you had that cool spear infantry that was like kind of in between, like, you know, like a regular swordsman line and the pike line. I forget what you called them, but
Probably the Godendog from the Dutch.
possibly. But it was like a unit theory craft, and I thought that was so cool. And then I
Oh,
watched
yep.
your
That would be the footman back in the day.
the footman. Yes, yeah. So I watched the footman one, and I thought that was so cool. And you know, and I've wanted to do things like that, kind of like split them up, because especially some of the texts don't make sense when you think about it from just a like theoretical standpoint. Like you've got all these archery texts that are bracer. Like what need for a you know a crossbowman is there for a bracer? Like he needs to
Christ.
protect his arm from like you know. So that got me thinking like, well, why don't we do a split? You know, they tried to do the split in Age of Empires 4, but I think what really just I don't know, and I haven't played a lot of Age of Empires 4, is that the split doesn't seem to make sense, and there's always going to be like a better one. So depending on what civ you are, there's always going to be the better choice, because your bonuses or your civ, you know, identity are going to basically lead you to like one or the other. And so that's where, you know, Age of Empires 2 I think has a much better meta, because you have the archer and the skirmisher, and they're like diametrically opposed different guys, versus like I have my like DPS archer and my like less DPS but my heavy archer, and it's like, okay, which one is viable for this particular, you know, given moment or matchup. So I tried not to do that in this mod, but I did give them different texts and like different things that they should be. Like in the mod, crossbowmen should be your late game, like stomp everybody, kill everybody, win the game unit. They have different texts to like help them catch up. Like their texts focus on obviously the damage and range, like normal archers, but then they have specific texts to give them a faster training speed and a faster reload, to kind of compensate for things and help them catch up and, you know, just be unbelievably powerful. And then they have a starting base attack that's like astronomically higher than the archers.
Yes,
but then the
indeed.
archers have like DPS upgrades and range, and that's kind of their thing, is to get, you know, more range, faster speed, better accuracies, but their accuracy is inherently lower. So I tried to do that, but I tried to also keep it per civ. So like each civ does their own things. Let me see if this crashes the game. Hopefully not. Oh, here we go.
Hey.
Yeah. Hey, so anyways, yeah, like you can see, I've got blacksmith, you've got Americas that have like the archery texts, and then you've got your other stuff here. So here you have, you know, archer stuff, and then bracer thumb ring are an archer thing, and then we go to unit like the order that I made. Where are they? And they don't have the same stuff. Like they have different crossbow texts that do crossbow things, but they get, you know, all the normal like arrow enhancements. So I tried to split the line that way, kind of make them interesting and unique depending on the civ, and also, you know, kind of design the flavor towards, you know, the civs being a lot different from one another.
Totally. Yep. I am a huge advocate for units being as different from each other as possible, within the confines of like believability. And sometimes that means that you are going to be deviating from like hyper strict historical accuracy, but as I've often discussed, I think that hyper strict historical accuracy is less important than historical authenticity, where you are letting people represent and depict many of these elements and things, and you're acknowledging their existence. You're paying homage to them. You're letting people learn about them without saying, okay, and now because this was the case, this is the only thing that you can do. Because at the end of the day, that will largely homogenize a lot of gameplay, because historically speaking, a lot of warfare has been quite similar over the years. There are differences for sure, but a big blob of guys mashing into another big blob of guys has been the theme for the vast majority of human history. And if we are going to get interesting and exciting gameplay that lets us show off what makes things unique and different, then you need to draw a line between strict accuracy and authenticity. And that's the line I try to draw. Something that lets us emphasize the differences while still showing elements, like strong elements of truth that people can learn and not be misled by. Let's see. Oh, goodness gracious. Bunch more comments, and then I guess we can call it for a wrap up. Couple of good ones, actually. Godflesh adds, AoE 4 is poop. I dislike how the game was conceived. I really have serious problems with AoE 4 myself. I would fully agree. Tommy Tusock says, I like 4, but my big issue is that some civilizations have too much reward tacked onto things that should already be rewarding. like Delhi basically winning the game for getting map control. Map control already wins you the game, giving such advantage on top that just dumbs down the flow of things. Yeah, like, to me, AoE 4, the issue with it is they were embarrassed to not have made StarCraft, and then they tried to make StarCraft. But I don't know, like, maybe that's kind of a harsh way of putting it, but I think the bigger issue with AoE 4 for me is that they said they were going for a historically authentic game, and then they didn't. That's what annoyed me. And like, why make it then? Is it because you wanted StarCraft? We have StarCraft. We don't need this. Made a concept for Civ 5 and 6 for archers and crossbows, then adapted to AoE 2. Archers are faster, long range, cheap. Crossbows short range, charge attack, close up, expensive. There's a good way to do it. Godflesh said during the War of the Roses, the English used a lot of light crossbows for defense in their castles. Maybe light crossbowmen that increases attack in defensive castles could be neat. Yeah, there's like a billion ways you can implement ideas in a way that makes them feel authentic, even if it's not strictly accurate. You can evoke elements of history. Dionysio says, RTS mechanics are an abstraction after all, but there are limits, like making Armenians a naval superpower. Bingo! That's precisely correct. It'd be silly if a game did something random like that. Yeah, I agree. That would be silly. That would be wildly silly. In that case, before we sign off, Pwner, are there any other things that you want to mention, you want to add, or that you want to plug?
Yeah, I guess I'll just plug the mod. This is Empirecraft mod. We've got a Discord, so if you want to come see what kind of crazy stuff I'm up to,
let me invite people now to it.
Cool.
Generate a link, copy, bam, and I'll put it in chat. Join the Empirecraft Discord. Any other thoughts that you'd like to mention on topics we've discussed or others besides, Pwner?
No, I think you've got it pretty well covered here. I'm glad to have another opportunity to be on here and show off some cool stuff. Hopefully it was interesting for some people to watch it and see, some possibilities for the game here. So
You do fantastic work, and it's awesome getting a chance to talk to you. And in that case, I shan't take you away from your Sunday any longer than I already have. So thank you so much for your time, Pwner. It has been an absolute pleasure, and I will hopefully speak to you in future.
Sounds great. Take care.
See you, bud. All right, my friends. In that case, let us wrap up. Any final questions or brief topics you want me to discuss before we bring the stream to a close? I hope you've enjoyed listening to Pwner and seeing the amazing work that he does. I'm really enjoying bringing guests on, so I think I'm going to keep doing it, and I hope that they are proving interesting and enjoyable for you guys as well. So yeah, any final thoughts before we sign off? I'll give a minute or two for other questions or topics to roll in. Historical authenticity is obviously a conversation I really like having, and it's fun seeing you guys talking about it in chat as well. There's just so many options. There's no shortage of options of how you can implement things in a way that is authentic, even if you're not doing it, again, strictly accurate. I don't think strict accuracy is what we want. We want authenticity. So yeah, just when people simplify and streamline, I think it usually comes with big problems. At least from my taste. And I think there's ways you can have both. You have to make some compromises, but there's ways you can have both. Absolutely lovely boats. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, Pwner does incredible work. And I appreciate you guys being so welcoming to having him back on the channel. You're the best. Thank you, Max. You're a lovely fellow as well. If we have no more questions coming in, I say it's time we wrap up. Thank you for the presentation. Mod Showcase was awesome. Excellent. Delighted to have it. And thank you for submitting, Godflesh. That was a great piece of work. One more time before we wrap up, I'm going to plug my game Enclave. If you guys, again, have any interest in tabletop role-playing games whatsoever, and or you want to support my work, please do follow my Kickstarter page for Enclave. I would tremendously appreciate it. It's a way to give back to me in a way that can hopefully help enable me to do more game stuff in future, maybe in the direction of RTS as well. I will put the link in chat once more, but zero worries if it doesn't end up being something that you are interested in. This is not a matter of compulsion. It's a matter of me showing what I've been doing with my time and what I plan on doing more of going forwards. Let's see. I like your different time frames idea, but I think that the thing that defines the group of people like Chinese is greatly altered like by a different dynasty, there should be a different civilization. I think that that is almost entirely true, and I do agree with it. And I think that the great thing about splitting time frames up more precisely is it allows you to do that in a more concise and consistent manner. But let's say we had like a time frame where two major Chinese dynasties were both very important. I would have both of those be different civilizations. I fully agree with that. Did you make the art in Enclave? No, a friend of mine named Greg Taylor made the art. He has been a professional game artist for 15 years. He loves Enclave and is a fan of the game. And it is pretty much entirely because he likes the game that I was able to afford him, because otherwise he's way out of my price range. Have a nice Sunday to you too, Max. It's been a pleasure having you in chat. And thank you guys so much for taking a chunk of your Sunday to watch. I hope it's been enjoyable. I hope it's been informative and interesting. And until we meet again, my name is Robbie Howell. Oh, before we leave, excuse me. We got another question in chat that I do need to answer. When's the Kickstarter launching? We'll definitely back it, hoping to jump into Enclave early July. That's very kind of you. Kickstarter is not going to be launching until autumn, most likely late September. So you have until then. And in the meantime, I'm going to be reminding you guys of its existence, hopefully in a way that isn't too annoying. So thank you for clarifying. And yes, you can expect videos this month. There's this gigantic one that I've been trying to get through for a while, but has been blocked in a few ways. So hopefully I'll be able to get that to you. We'll have Total Overhaul coming in, at least one episode. So there will be other content to look forward to this month, as well as in July, as well as another stream in July that I am already working on getting locked in. But until then, my name is Robbie Howell. Thank you guys so much for taking part of your Sunday to watch and enjoy. And ciao for now.